Whoa, kind of not a lovely day in the neighborhood. Probably should be wearing a hat, it's raining and such. Anyway, it's been a rough couple of days for me. Anyway, anyway, quite miserable. Anyway, Professor Anton video. Yay! So anyway, him and this handsome guy, who's, really a phantasmagorical. I mean, you could call them both hippies. They're kind of, around my generation, a little lesser. But, yeah, just forget about it. Anyway, it's this ontology, this epistemology crap where, we know there's a reality, and then there's our ability to perceive reality. And this sort of relates to a lot of conversations on YouTube, apparently. And I don't think there's any need to sit there and slice and dice it to pieces. We're changed by every second of interaction we have with the universe. It's constantly impacting our insular planetoid that is ourselves, and reforming it, changing its mass, its density, its energy level. It's all this bullshit. So there's no point in denying the fact that when we perceive reality, we are perceiving just a segment of the context. But it's usually an important segment of the context. We're kind of designed to pick out the important bits, and that's sort of the way it works. I mean, if we found out there were, the whole universe was, somehow they were doing the Star Wars thing, and there's all kinds of civilizations out there, and they're doing all kinds of interesting, fun things, and blah blah blah. We would be like, wow, we were so ignorant. Here we are at the far end of a galaxy they hadn't explored yet, because there's so much to get to, and they just haven't gotten to us yet. And we'd say, boy, we looked up in the sky, and we didn't know that was going on. And so we could conclude that our epistemology didn't match the ontology, or vice versa, whatever. That our perception of reality didn't really do justice to reality. And yeah, that's a problem we might have, but I don't think that has anything to do with the problem of our reality. Our reality is more about contextualizing and understanding our own existence and the mechanics of it. And you could think about like physics, for example. The understanding has evolved with time. I have to be a little careful I don't slip here. It's a little slimy. It's a much richer, in terms of the amount of information we have. As time passes, we get more information. We get more and more sophisticated and sometimes even simpler models, but more accurate models, one can safely assume. And getting closer to the picture anyway. And that's sort of what we're doing. We're taking the scatter that is reality and putting the puzzle pieces in more explicit order through the process of our intelligence and the acquisition of our knowledge stored in our brain and in the peripheral indexes, books, and diagrams and drawings and notes that we take throughout our life to help us retain information. Because, we're not perfect at that. We forget things. We lose stuff. And that's the part of this functionality also. It's a liability of it. But we can compensate for that, like I said, by writing stuff down and storing records of it and recording videos or whatever we do to retain perspectives and emphasis. Emphasis is a good word. So I just don't see any problem here. I mean, Professor Anton talks as if this is some sort of problem, that thinking about reality and living in reality are somehow not perfectly compatible, and they are. But I think it's more just because they don't think reality has revealed itself to us. That somehow the Mother Nature hasn't disrobed entirely, and so we haven't seen all the what they think are probably some sort of marvelous bits or something. And I'm like, oh no, we've got the skanky whore nailed, and she ain't got no secrets. Not too many left. And this game is quite dissectable, quite understandable from the amount of knowledge we have gleaned from the world and the environment. We can draw so many conclusions. We can put so much of this together in a rational, connected dot kind of way. And that is probably another, like I said, that's a good metaphor for the fact that, any connected dot drawing, you can make mistakes. You can connect the dots wrong, and then the image will be wrong. It might look close, but it'll still be wrong. But the general idea might still be there. Might be hard to turn a connected dot drawing of, a flower into a nuclear bomb. It might be possible, but so anyway, we have pretty well labeled dots. Let me say. So most of them are labeled pretty well. The pattern is it's there. I say, this is Darwin all over the place in the sense of its evolution all over the place. I guess Darwin really shouldn't be the key word for that word, but that's the concept. It's a reproducing molecule, and over time it changes and adapts based on pressures created by the environment. Pressures. I find that an interesting word now, just because I was doing some physics stuff and playing with pressure as a concept in the world, and I think it means something. I think it's a big part of everything. Gravity, electricity, photons. I think they're all under pressure. Yeah, I have to describe that in some way, but anyway, that's a whole different subject. But it's not different, right? It's part of this context of this physical universe doing crude mechanical things, and that in this one portion there's a swirl in the water and it looks like Richard Nixon. Why? Who knows why? Yeah, it came out really, really strange this time. It is bizarre. Yes, we can call it that. But really, I mean, if you were digging potatoes and you found a potato that looked just like you, you'd say, wow, that's really, really bizarre. It's incredible. But you wouldn't say, there, it's proof of God. You'd understand that this is what is possible in the world. And it's possible for, obviously, for biomass to do more than, green algae. That if a certain chain of events takes place in a certain environment, it can do something just frickin' bizarre. And I claim that's what we are. And you can see the flaws that demonstrate that it isn't some sort of design that would be on purpose. We're flawed enough. we're flawed more than enough, but most people have too much ego to admit that. that there's too much flaw in how we play the game and the tool that we play the game with, this body, its imperfections and flaws. But they're so human, celebrity struck that they can't admit the truth regarding what we are, because their own subjective, conditioned attachment is so overwhelming that they have no hope of grasping the truth of it, or any kind of real connect the dot context. So anyway, back to these words again. Yeah, I just think it's so corrosive to conversation to use words that are they're just horribly defined. I mean, the subtle distinctions between these words, ontology, epistemology, schemistiology. You could just keep making up more and more of them, and they're all a different way of saying what is the truth. And then the opposite version, there's people who are saying the truth is too complicated, and then there's other people who are just simplifying it so much, that they break the very idea of the fact that we have the capacity to see a context, to understand what are the important bits, and to do it with something other than our stomach and our reproductive organs. That's what our brain is sort of, capable of, is making us smarter than reflexes. Even though our brain is reflexes, the reflexes are patterned, formatted to a construct of logic. They can do it, and there's every reason to do it. And clearly we can do it to a very high end of complexity and abstraction. I mean, what physicists and mathematicians do, some of it is very difficult. It takes quite a lot of work. The language is so obtuse to be able to, do it intuitively, to make it your own, to make it yourself, to understand it so well, to gain a comfort with it. It requires a high degree of complexity, a grasping of a complexity, like playing chess. And, a great chess player has to have an awful lot of storage of relationships, understanding them, understanding the depth they go to, and the subtle patterns they create. And so somewhere in between those two things, obviously I don't think if you get too deep, if you get too caught up in the singular detail, then you won't be able to see the big picture, if you're too close to the forest. And if you're too far away, it's no good either. So there has to be something, you can't make the drawing too few pixels, or you can't try to look at too many pixels. It's like when you deliberately try to walk or deliberately try to breathe, you'll screw it up. So I'm just saying that there's the danger of finding God in either one of these extremes, and I think that's what people have done. If they reduce it enough, they don't have to justify anything, and if they complexify it enough, they can keep finding some place unresolved enough to say God lives there. People do that with quantum an awful lot, quantum mechanics, and it's just pretty bogus. It's not only a distortion of what we do know, but it's a projection, even on the lie. Even if you lie about quantum mechanics, it still can't come up with this crap. it still doesn't resolve the irresolvable issue that there is absolutely nothing sensible about the idea of complexity being eternal and having it create crude. That is imbecilic. It's non sequitur, it's oxymoronic, it's a non-starter conceptually altogether, and such. So anyway, I just don't see the point of arguing about whether we can grasp all of reality in our mind, because I don't think we can. But we can understand what a Hitler is. We can understand him in different subtle, different ways. You know, we can put him in all kinds of different categories. Confused, silly, immature. You know, you can use lots of softer words, or you can use maniacal, evil, you know, a lot of other kind of words. But the point is you can understand it, put it in these general categories, and those categories will be generally accurate relative to other things you put in the same category that has similar properties. So again, we're back to categories and properties. I think those two words are the substance of rational perspective. That's the way to see what we're doing. The entirety of sensible thought is dependent on recognizing that that's the function. And yeah. And so I think that would be enough. I'm going to finish doing the lights here. Do a video of it sometime when they're done. It really is, you know, a quite adequate display and such. So until next time. Yeah, I might as well do a little bit of an add-on since I'm here. Got to walk, homework. Anyway, yeah, I could run, but I'd probably fall down anyway. It's kind of muddy. Anyway, so continuing with the story of how Earthlings, you know, we're all called Earthlings, and yet here we are living on very different planets. You know, it's kind of funny when you think that, you know, we all start here, and all have pretty much access to the, I guess all the people listening to this video anyway, certainly have access to, you know, huge databases of information, volumes and volumes of records of what it is to be alive and human. I guess some people might not be English literate for reading, so maybe they don't have quite as much, but it's still a lot of stuff. Yeah, I'm sure all kinds of books are written in all kinds of languages, some of them in the original, which maybe is even better than the English version. So anyway, yeah, and it just seems here we are, same planet, lots of the same resources, and you know, so we're just different kinds of people. There's technical people and science people, and there's space cadets and loop-de-loos and witch doctors and liars and frauds and fakes and phonies, and it is one of the peculiarities of our species that this is part of our adaptability. Part of what gave humans the advantage was their capacity to diversify, to exploit any environment almost, to acclimate to the environment, and you know, to acclimate to individual circumstances, tribal politics, to be able to, you know, turn on and turn off different ways of being, to pretend to be an ally when you're an enemy. That kind of crap was probably very advantageous to our ancestors, to just play along. So here we are, stuck in a world where we're becoming more and more like yeah, cats almost. Even though we have a strong evolutionary bias towards family and tribe, we have this other bias emerging of our individuality, and I guess to some extent cats have that too. So in some ways we parallel them. We do seem to have a limited network of associates. We can work together with a certain number of people, and that's about it. You know, in terms of affections, they say we can only store in our brain, you know, a name and identity for 100 or so friends and family, and then it gets kind of mushy after that. I don't know. I've never tested it. I've never known 100 interesting people at one time. But anyway, it is a strange circumstance to be stuck in, that your own kind are alien. You know, that you're so different, so foreign in terms of how you simply interpret this shit. You know, the shit that this is, the stuff it is. You interpret it so differently that, yeah, you wouldn't sometimes just almost think, gee, it'd be nice to be able to, you know, run across a field with a big giant hammer and smash that fucker in the head. And yet it's an earthling. It's not an alien invader. It's not some tentacled monster. It's not even a body snatcher. But somehow we've managed to find a way, you know, to take what's here, to take the information, the shit, and somehow interpret it, understand it, dissect it, perceive it, smell it, touch it, taste it, be it, all that crap in entirely different ways. And I say certain words, people's perceptions will be entirely different. You know, we'll have common references, like pretty common anyway. Even if I say the word blue, though, some people think of light blue, some people think of dark blue. You know, some people think of coral. You know, it's just more like green. But anyway, you know, it's just so little consistency on those levels. And I guess the real irritation is that I think on the raw, scientific, methodical, you know, the real truth-seeking, let's see, what's the words for this? You know, non-wishful thinking, non-perverted, non-religious, non-distorted, you know, a nice, clean, clinical, sterile view of this stuff, we should be able to reach some, you know, common statements about what the function is and how it's functioning, and whether that function is something to applaud or to moan and bemoan rationally. I know it sounds stupid to bemoan rationally, but I think there is a clear rational element to the things, the correlates, the things that create our emotions. All emotions aren't irrational, and our emotions of empathy, I would argue, are probably the most rational of our emotions, in the sense that we're basically just doing something as simple as imagining ourselves in a circumstance and doing the obvious logic of, ooh, I wouldn't like that, which doesn't take much effort at all. Anyway, enough of an add-on, I believe. So, yeah, till the next video. So, 25 minutes or so. Whatever. Yeah. Yeah.